Business Day ran it's what looks like a scoop. They said, according to their sources, the central bank is going to be issuing 5 new banking licenses. So it looks like we're going to be getting 5 new banks. Hazel, I'm showing. I think they put a couple names there. One of them is called Globus. The other one is Titan. Titan is Thanos' planet. That's where Thanos is from. Hazel, let me get your thoughts here. What are you hearing? Did you hear the same thing about the central bank possibly? Because again, this isn't official, right? So this is what Business Day was reporting as far as what their sources were telling them. What do you think?
So yeah, there's some news that, like you rightly said, that a few new banks are going to be coming on soon. However, in my view, I think that because they're going to be competing likely competing in the same space as the already existing tier two banks, most likely.
Okay.
They're going to be competing for the same customers, for the same customer deposits and all of that. So I don't think it's going to drive much change, in the sense that few people are talking about the fact that it could drive credit growth or it could drive increased financial inclusion. I don't see that happening, except if they're going to be perhaps niche banks, or they're going to provide rather niche banking services. If that's not happening, then and they're also, and if that's not happening, and they're going to be likely based in Lagos,
Yeah.
chasing the same customers, then
What are we really expecting
there's
from
going to be
them?
minimal impact in that sense.
Just to remind people, the minimum capital requirement for a regional bank is 10 billion naira, for a national bank 25 billion naira, and for an international bank 50 billion naira. It ain't cheap.
So minimum 10 billion.
Exactly. So if Valentine, if you want to open a bank with me, I don't even know if I want to go into that with you. But,
For now.
Here's another thing. Of course, as has been the story for 2018, lending to the private sector, we haven't really seen much of it from our dear banks. Yeah. As far as credit to the private sector. Yeah. I still can't borrow. Valentine, we still can't get.
Why are you adding me to this?
No, I'm just saying. There's just the interest rates are too high.
I know.
Yeah,
it is a challenge. It's a challenge.
All right. So anyway,
some other thing that seems to be a challenge to Yinka Hazel, he just stepped in on WhatsApp.
Yinka, you've come again.
This Hazel babe again. Chai, my head.
Yinka, what do you think about the CBN issuing 5 new licenses to banks? Sort of going on about Hazel's voice.
Yinka,
all right.
Focus.
Yes, focus, Yinka. Benga has the message, yeah?
Benga says, if new banks are going to be licensed, they are likely to be merchant banks, not commercial banks, and they will introduce innovative services. Otherwise, they won't last.
All right.
And then Shola comes in to add her own. Shola says, they've been licensed though. They've finished recruiting. Don't say I said so. A certain bank, Z, has lost so many staff. Don't say I said so.
Shola is on the he knows the code. He knows the code. We're using all these little codes. Shola, thank you for that. Well, all right, so we move from the CBN story to Q1 results. Hazel, let's start with Komal Oil. I'm sure it wasn't as spectacular as Q1 2018. What are we seeing with Okomo's Q1 2019 results?
Okay, so first of all, for 2018, for Q1 2018, Okomo saw higher, basically their FFB output, their fresh fruit bunch output.
Thank you for the acronym. Yes, fresh fruit bunch output. Yes,
was a lot higher than normal in Q1 2018.
Okay.
And that had normalized this year. And in addition to that, average CPO prices, average crude palm oil prices have come down by about 17% on a year-on-year basis. So the combination of that is likely what has driven this 45% decline we saw in their palm oil sales, or in the overall sales as well.
Okay.
So we still expect management to give some further clarity as to what could have been an additional driver for the decline. I think also, given the fact that another pressure point that has lingered for them is the fact that there's still the influx of cheaper CPO small put in from neighboring countries, and that has been putting pressure on their volumes. I think that has also, in addition to the other factors that mentioned earlier, contributed to the weakness we saw in their revenues.
Okay.
Then going further, in the first quarter this year, the COGS came down.
COGS, of course, is cost of goods sold. Yes, thank you. We have to help our listeners. So keep going. Yeah, cost of goods sold came down. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, take a moment. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Excuse me.
All right, sorry about that.
Sorry,
Yeah.
excuse me. So yeah, so in the first quarter of this year, so actually COGS came up.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, so it was up. Okay, it
yeah,
increased.
COGS,
Okay.
yeah, sorry, there was a rise in COGS, and and the combination of that drove a contraction in their gross profits and in
Okay.
their gross profit margins. So I think that the rise in COGS was largely due to likely due to increased fertilizer costs because in December CBN added fertilizer to the list of
The
some
41,
to the list
41.
of banned items.
Yeah,
So
right.
I think that also that might have been what contributed to the increased COGS that we saw in this quarter.
Okay.
So the combination of that drove, like I said, a contraction in their gross profits, and then as much as they tried to moderate operating costs.
Mm-hmm.
The impact of the decline in operating costs wasn't up to the decline in the gross profit. So
Right,
off the
right.
back of that, the operating profits were now down by about 67%.
Ouch.
So yeah,
So a
so
combination of that.
that's
You know,
really what's happening.
It's
And then
it's yeah. Go ahead.
okay, so I was going to say that basically, at the beginning of the year, management had already kind of guided to the fact that earnings for this year are not going to be quite impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So they're still struggling with lower CPO prices this
Yeah.
year. So globally, CPO prices are expected to remain weak this year.
Mm.
They were weak last year, expected to remain weak this year. What would have been a driver for earnings growth would have been the additional incremental 4,000 hectares of mature palm area
Okay.
that was expected to come on stream this year, but then management has now guided to the fact that that would come on stream next year.
Okay.
So for this year, we're not very optimistic about their earnings. For going into next year, that would probably see once that 4,000 hectares comes on stream. I think that would help drive that would be supportive of earnings growth for them.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you for that. And it's interesting, this issue of smuggling affecting volumes. Dangote Sugar also complained about the same thing, about how sugar smuggled in through our weak borders was affecting the volumes. Now we see Komal Oil complaining about the same thing. We see Valentine. We have more
We have
gist on these banks.
speculations, yeah.
Papi K
I
is
like
coming
people
in.
are giving us gist from
Look,
the
our
grapevine.
listeners are analysts as well. They are an extra guest on
I
the
love
show.
it. I love it. Papi K says, Grapevine source about Global's Bank. Are you ready? It has it that May 1st is the launch date.
Okay.
And the former executive director of the bank, starting with an H, is even going to be their DMD.
Interesting.
It says, #Emefiele silent owner. You didn't hear it from me.
Okay.
But seriously, doubt that we need countless banks who can fund mega projects, I beg.
Thank you for that.
Honestly,
Papi K.
yeah,
Thank
that's
you,
a good
thank you,
angle.
thank you,
Benga
thank you.
Kamu says, well, does Komal Oil retain their palm oil or sell mainly to industrial users?
I think it's mainly to industrials, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
And
cool.
Ugo send us from VI says, Yinka, stop complimenting Hazel. You distract her. I like it. Well, please add your names to your messages so we can take them. I
All
think this
right.
one is Yemi. Yemi says, good morning. Your analyst needs to speak clearly.
Yeah, she has a very soft voice. So she's gonna shout. Yeah,
Don't worry, she has a sultry
she's gonna
voice,
shout
it's
on the
fine.
next one. All right, so let me see now. We move from Komal Oil to let's see now. Who is our next Q1 performer that we're going to be looking at now? Unilever. Yes, I think we were supposed to talk about Unilever last week, but we didn't get to them. Also, the same issue with Unilever. Their performance was not as good as we expected. Yes.
Yes. So for Unilever, results were also, like you said, unimpressive. So just to backtrack, so last year for the HPC, so that's their home and personal care, we saw muted growth. So it grew by just 1% for the whole of 2018. But for for their food segment, that was still strong, grew by 19%. However, coming into this year in the first quarter, we saw that HPC was down by 27% for the quarter.
Wow.
While food was down by 13% for the quarter, which is surprising given that the food segment is typically quite resilient.
Right. Because people always have to buy food.
Exactly. So yeah, but then the parent company had mentioned on their own conference call, or basically in their own quarter one results
Yeah.
that in Nigeria there was some volume pressure due to trade disruptions around the election period.
Okay.
I think in addition to that, there has also been increased competitive pressure in both segments. So for the HPC segment, where So Clean and Sunlight and Omo are their major brands there,
Right.
they've been seeing some increased competitive pressure from other competing brands in that space. While in the food segment, No, which is their key brand, there has been seeing some increased competitive pressure from new seasoning cubes that have entered the markets
Okay.
in sometime in Q4 last year. So I think the combination of that, in addition to their parent company said, trade disruptions during the election period what has contributed to this steep decline, because the decline in both segments were quite steep in this quarter.
Right.
What contributed to that decline that we saw? So yeah.
Interesting. So I keep seeing a theme of, like, even yesterday when we were talking about Dangote cement, we saw increased competition for him, competition for Unilever, also the issue of porous borders with smuggling. It's going to be an interesting year when we're at the end of 2019. We now go look at the full year performances for all these companies. All right,
competition is good.
It's good. Yeah,
business.
It's good. But then it's healthy for consumers as well. But the players as well. It affects their margins. All right. Well, wanted to get into. We were tired of comparing Nigeria to Ghana. There was a story here on Kenya and how well they did in agriculture. But we'll get to that tomorrow, because Valentine, you're giving me the air traffic control signals. To wrap up. Hazel from Sigma Pensions, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel.
Appreciate having you. Yes.
Always a pleasure.
And thanks for your messages for our analysts on WhatsApp, giving us the gist on these new banks. Thank you very much.
Like all the scoop. Thank you so much. And thank you to Ibrahim, who sends in the last message. Says, even though it's discretionary, is it right or wise for a company to not pay dividends to shareholders but share profit among its staff?
Ibrahim, let's go home. He's shaking tables this morning. Thanks for your message, Ibrahim.
All right, contact Rotus on Twitter at Rotanquotes. ROTNKWOT. This is still Smooth Breakfast. We have an exciting conversation that's coming up next. Stay with us.
Business Express on Smooth 98.1.
Thank you.